where behaviour was not always the most circumspect, was some form of torture. I wondered how many times she had already stopped to provide unsolicited censure to those in attendance. It was her specialty, after all. Just the sight of Mrs. Westwood was enough to determine me more than ever to help Lucy gain the approval of her uncle, who was also her guardian. Lucy deserved more freedom than she had enjoyed under Mrs. Westwood's care, and I had promised myself to be an advocate for her the moment I had met her at the seminary. If that meant speaking with her stuffy old uncle, I was more than happy to do it. My own father was just such a stuffy old man, a naval admiral, in fact, and having associated with his fellows all my life, I'd had plenty of occasion to learn how to appeal to even the most rigid of old men. I loved a good challenge. An overabundance of company leads to an underabundance of supervision, Mrs. Westwood tittered as she came up beside us, shooting another disapproving glance at the whispering couple she had passed. I had heard this particular maxim a handful of times from her. It was the reason she took on fewer young women at her seminary than most. She needed to be able to devote the proper amount of attention to each one. She surveyed the room with displeasure. "One would think that—" "He is here," Lucy called out, rudely, but mercifully, interrupting her cousin. Surprised to hear her sound so animated at her guardian's arrival, I whipped around to the doorway, curious to see my opponent. But it was only Edwin Pike, the man Lucy had fallen in love with. When he caught sight of Lucy, his mouth drew up into a smile. He was a handsome young man, with sandy hair, a broad smile, and an amiable personality. He pushed his way through the crowd toward her, receiving her hand with his. I thought he might kiss her glove, but he settled for a bow. His eye caught mine as he came up from it, and I smiled at him, acknowledging the wisdom of his decision. Mrs. Westwood seemed to look upon Mr. Pike's courting of Lucy favourably enough, but her tone had undergone a marked shift since Lucy's uncle had expressed his disapproval of the match. Mrs. Westwood might be a chaperone and companion to Lucy, but it was her uncle who made the decisions for Lucy's future. I wished he might have witnessed this moment, though. Surely no one could be heartless enough to deny marriage to two people who looked at one another the way Lucy and Mr. Pike were regarding each other. I knew a pang of jealousy at the sight of it, like the slice of a paper cut. I had long given up hoping to be regarded in such a way, but every now and then I had a moment of weakness, a moment of wishing I was not so very difficult a woman. But tonight was not about me. It was about softening the heart of Lucy's uncle. "What is your uncle's name, Lucy?" I asked. She was still looking at Edwin, as though the physical contact she was denied could only be made up for by communicating the depth of her feelings by eye contact. "Duke." "What?" I said, dismayed. Surely Lucy would have told me if her uncle was a duke, and surely she would not be spending her time at Mrs. Westwood's if that were the case. Unless, that is, he was a cantankerous penny-pinching sort of duke. She turned to me, and Mr. Pike took his place beside her. Whether or not her guardian gave them his approval to marry, Lucy was unlikely to have many other suitors, at least not any who happened to be attending this assembly. Their proximity and attitude toward one another spoke quite clearly of their intentions and feelings. A censure from Mrs. Westwood was imminent. "Well, properly, his name is Marmaduke Russell," Lucy said, "but he has always insisted I call him Uncle Duke, and I daren't disobey him." My lip curled up in a smile, half amused, half contemptuous. I saw through this man already. Undoubtedly, he thought if he could only manage to be called Duke, he might be regarded with the same awe and deference as someone holding that title. It was somewhat pathetic, and I felt a sliver of pity for the sort of man who would stoop to such methods. Lucy stiffened, her eyes growing wider.